I know that I had asked even just earlier in the week, like, who struggles with bloating? And like, so many people were like, oh my gosh, yes, like that's a common thing. And especially as we're, coming into a more interesting time of our lives and when things are changing as we get into perimenopause and menopause, things really start to shift, right? And the frustration is that society and even our doctors are telling us that this stuff is normal, and it's not. It's common, but it's not normal. This is not a normal thing. So, especially when it comes to bloating, it's common, but it's not normal. And there's things that we can do to fix this, which is huge, right? So, yay, at least we can fix it because that's what we're here for, right? So, tonight's training is all about bloating because bloating sucks. It's common in perimenopause and menopause, but we've all experienced it at some point in our lives for sure, especially just as women, right? As things are changing, as we become more mature, we get to experience all the fun things, right? So, but for some people, this might be a daily occurrence. I know for me, this used to be a daily occurrence for me, where it was happening more and more often. I know some of us have it a little bit more intense than others, or, as your day goes on, like your pants start feeling really tight and you just start getting like super uncomfortable. So today I really want to talk about like what's happening, especially as we're approaching perimenopause and menopause. What is bloating to begin with? What's causing it? And then what can we do to fix it? So that's what, again, all of us want to know, right? Like, I'm suffering, help me. How do I fix this? Um, because it's uncomfortable, right? And it can be embarrassing. It's not super flattering. It's just not a good time. So, first and foremost, what is bloating? Now, that's topic number one. So, bloating is where your abdomen or your stomach starts to feel full, and it might distend out. It might feel tight. Um, Personally, like I've experienced this certain times, like certain days or foods or hormone stuff kind of fluctuating where I literally looked like I was like 6 months pregnant, which is not a good look, right? Like, not for me. But it just, it feels tight, it feels uncomfortable, it protrudes out. Our pants fit tight. When we bend over, it's uncomfortable. When we're sitting, it's uncomfortable. But typically, this is going to be caused by gas. But it can also be caused by liquids or solids that do start to build up in your abdomen. And since the main cause of bloating is typically gas, where is the gas coming from? So there's a few internal causes of bloating, and one of those things is honestly swallowing too much air. So this can happen in many places, but a real common place it occurs when we're just eating too fast. So if you think about it, like taking a really deep breath in, it's often through our mouth, right? So as you're taking a big bite of food and you're chewing really fast, that air, which is gas, you're consuming that. It comes down into your digestive system, it goes to your stomach, then has to pass through in some capacity, one way or another, right? So it can lead to that gas and that bloating feeling. And there's also certain types of carbohydrates that we are not able to fully break down by the enzymes in our small intestine. And so when they travel to the large intestine, then they're metabolized by the bacteria that's in there. And this actually results in a fermentation process. And that fermentation process produces some hydrogen and some carbon dioxide gases. Now, this isn't necessarily saying that like run away from foods, especially carbs. Carbs are not the devil, and that's a whole nother training for a whole nother day. But these are just some examples of like some carbohydrates that like they're not as easily broken down, right? Um, in our intestines. And you can find out more about those. We're not going to go into that realm of things tonight. We will soon. but they're called food maps, and they often fall into a category along with prebiotic fibers. And so again, this doesn't mean you should avoid these foods at all costs. They're actually really great for your gut most of the time, right? So, but we've always got these caveats. If you notice that these certain foods cause bloating for you, then maybe removing them for just a while can help alleviate bloating. And then working on reintroducing them slowly back into your system over time so that your body can actually adapt to them. So we'll get more into that here in just a little bit, but I'm not going to go through everything that the food maps are, but really, like if you Google food map, FODMAP, ask each of those letters except for the S stands for a different category of foods. Um, and this may be like, oh my gosh, like this whole category of foods leaves me feeling bloated. That does not mean you'll never be able to eat them again, but it might be worth taking them out for a while, avoiding them for a little bit, and like I said, reintroducing them in a little at a time. So, what other things can cause some internal bloating for us? Well, unfortunately, some of us experience a lack of the enzyme called lactase, and it breaks down and digests milk sugars known as lactose. So, in order to have that proper digestion, well, if you don't have that enzyme or you have very little of it, it can cause bloating and something that we call lactose intolerance. So there's varying degrees of lactose intolerance, and many people can get away just fine by taking like a lactase supplement anytime that they're going to have dairy. Other people just never really feel good about having dairy at all. Often sheep's milk or goat milk can be more tolerated than cow's milk. But also some people do better with cheese. It really has to do with like how it's processed and stuff like that that makes a big difference, especially when it comes to cheese. This is something that I learned over the last few years of like how the cheese is processed is actually like how much of that enzyme is in there. And like the harder the cheese is, the less likely you are to have the same reactions to what you're more sensitive to when it comes to lactose. So just an interesting thing I learned from an incredible cheese lady that's local here. Um, but another cause of bloating is having an overgrowth of gut bacteria. And it's not necessarily like good bacteria or bad bacteria. It can be an overgrowth of either one. It's just having an imbalance. And either way, it's just a combination of just things are not balanced out, okay? And I'm going to do another training on like prebiotics, probiotics, good and bad gut bacteria here soon. But I think a lot of people use prebiotics and probiotics really haphazardly. Like, I guess that's the way to say it, but you don't know if you're actually making the imbalance better or worse because you don't know if you have too much of a certain kind of good bacteria and you're making it worse. You know what I mean? Like, so you don't really know. And sometimes you get lucky and then it's good, but you shouldn't be on the same prebiotic or probiotic for longer than the duration that it actually says on the bottle. And there's a reason for that. You want to cycle through these things so that your bacteria isn't adapting to what you're giving it. It needs that change. So that's why it says on the bottle to only take it for a certain amount of time and have it like cycle through. So again, we'll cover that topic a little bit more in depth in another training, but gut bacteria imbalance, right? So we need enough good, we need enough bad of that balance of bacteria. And as I mentioned in the gut, you got to have both. So if they're out of balance, we can see a lot of bloating. We can see a lot of random skin issues popping up, hair and nail issues if our gut's off balance. There's a whole slew of things that could pop up and be directly related to an imbalance in that gut. So taking some probiotics can be helpful for a little bit of time, but you shouldn't be on them all of the time. And if you're constantly feeding bacteria, again, you're going to have an overgrowth of some, and it's just not good. So what we what I do want to touch on a little bit is kind of like the food stuff, and a little bit of experience with that. So about 2 years ago, I had a weird skin issue pop up. I had this like rash thing underneath my arm. It almost looked like I'd been scratched. It was the strangest thing. Um, and the dermatologist that I went to, because I thought, oh, it's like a bacterial, put some lotion on it, whatever. Um, she she got me right in the beginning because she directly said, well, none of this has anything to do with your diet. And I was like, what? Yes, it does. Like, I know there's some things I could clean up in my diet that would probably help this go away, but I can't believe you're literally telling me that, like, it has nothing to do with my diet or my gut health. Like, let's put you on a steroid cream and call it good. And they did, and I actually had a really bad allergic reaction to it. And you know what they wanted to do? Give me another steroid cream. And I was like, nope, I'm going to get a food sensitivity test done and figure out what's going on because I know this is directly related, to my gut. So again, when your doctor's telling you, oh, it's normal, do some research. It's common, but it's not normal. And they always want to throw a pill or a potion or a lotion on it, right? Back to our gut. So it turned out to be a little bit of a overgrowth in the bacteria I had in my gut. Um, this particular one was Candida is a name for a certain overgrowth of bacteria. This one was kind of sort of that, but not all the way. So anyway, I got this food sensitivity list and I went on an elimination diet. So I had taken it and it saw like which foods I was most sensitive to, what was bothering me, what was like in the red. And so I took those things out for about 3 months. I'm not gonna lie, it sucked. I mean, I had to take out dairy and sugar and, um, no highly processed foods, which wasn't a big deal because I don't eat a ton of that anyway, but no fruit except for certain berries and pears. And I love apples, and it was, yeah, I had to take out wheat, barley, gluten, super low carb, and it was rough because I freaking love cheese. And I love carbs so much. And a life without cheese or carbs is just, it's not that great. So I'm going to be honest, it super sucked. But doing that allowed my body to totally reset, um, and heal what I had going on. Plus, I just noticed some other just benefits of like better skin, nails, hair, all of those things were starting to get like overall better. And now I can eat everything freely and I still have to limit dairy a little bit here and there. I can't go ham on a whole block of cheese, but um, it's, and it's always like in our best health interests of our health to limit processed foods and to limit alcohol anyway. But I don't have to like do that all the time, right? Like I took it out for a while, let my body heal, slowly reintroduced everything back in, and haven't had any major reactions to any of them. Dairy, again, if I have too much of it, so I have to kind of like weigh in like week by week. But yeah, it was like 2 or 3, yeah, it was like 3 months, and it was rough. But I felt amazing, and it really helped me to see what foods reacted a certain way in my body. And so, same thing, like you don't have to like take these things completely out. The goal isn't to never eat them ever again. And we want to reintroduce them back in, but just make sure you're doing it slow and like one at a time so you can kind of pinpoint which ones you're having a little bit more of a reaction to. Um, so yeah, Maddie asked if I take antibiotics for extended period of time, do I need to stop for a while? If I take antibiotics for an extended amount of time, do I need to stop for a while? stop the antibiotics or stop your probiotics, because those we want to cycle through as well. So if you could maybe clarify that question for me, Maddie. I'm not, sorry, girlfriend, not understanding completely what you're asking. Um, okay, so then there's also like chronic constipation that's going to play like a huge role. Okay, probiotics. Yes, we want to cycle through our probiotics. Um, off of them for a while, on them, different ones. And again, I have another training coming up all on that where we will like deep dive into all that stuff coming very, very soon. So there's also chronic constipation that's going to play a huge role. It's going to, again, this is one of the things. I've had like 3 clients tell me that their doctor said, oh, you don't poop every day? Totally normal. You're just going through menopause. It's common, not normal. You should be pooping every day, okay? And it's amazing when you're pooping regularly, right? Like things slim down, you feel good, there's less inflammation, you feel less bloated, and honestly, you're just in a better mood anyways, right? So, but those are just some of the other causes of bloating and what you should be aware of. It's not always like a specific food per se. There can be quite a few things, and it could be a combination of foods together, and that's where like, you know, there's a little bit of trial and error that you have to do to figure out your body, right? And this is why when, you know, clients come into my program, part of their health assessment dives a lot into like the gut when they come in, and it helps me kind of figure out the area of the gut that's being targeted. We're tracking our bowel movements to see what's going on a week-to-week basis, where those fluctuations are happening. You know, we can kind of target what might be causing symptoms like that. So there's just like many layers of that bloating that it can come from. But so now that we know what bloating is actually, and some of the types of bloating that we can get, let's talk about the most common types of bloating that we see coming up like symptomatically with you ladies. So when I'm talking with you ladies, the number one issue I see is stress bloat. And I know you're probably thinking like, what the heck is stress bloat, right? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. Stress bloat is caused when we are constantly in that go, 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 fight or flight, running, fighting, hiding, even if we're just, you know, sitting in our chairs as we are right now, scrolling on our phone, because the body doesn't have time to tap in to the rest and digest portion of your nervous system when you're constantly go, 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 go. And it's like staying in that fight flight state all the time. Blood flow is actually pulled away from our intestines and it's put into where our body thinks we need it, like our hands, our feet, so our arms and our legs to run, fight, hide, those type of things. And so it literally slows your digestion down. It creates more of that fermentation we were talking about, creating more of the gases in our gut. And it's not a bad thing, but over fermentation and excess creation of these gases creates that massive bloating feeling again. So if you're someone who feels bloated like as the day goes on, like we're worse at night, but okay in the morning, then there's an other side of that. Like some of us like wake up bloated, right? So that one can be really frustrating, right? Because you're like, okay, I just spent like all night not eating. Why am I waking up bloated, right? So in that case, this could actually be a blood sugar issue, and it can be caused by either one, not eating enough at night, eating maybe the wrong foods at night, or eating too much at night, or two, it could be blood sugar dysregulation due to cortisol and high stress. So this is why de-stressing is so, 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 so very important. When we have stress bloat, we wake up bloated, and both of them are tied to stress usually, okay? And so the next type of bloating that we talk about is like what's bloating versus water retention. how do we know the difference? Well, bloating is actually not the same thing as water retention and that like puffy feeling, but you can have both of these at the same time. Lucky us, right? um, the puffiness that's typically caused by either more sodium or fluid retention, like, you know, you go out to eat, there's a lot of hidden sodium in the meals, different oils that they cook with. Um, Maybe you had a really intense workout and you're retaining more water. So it's not necessarily that you're bloated, but you know, you say you like look at your face or hands, wedding rings don't come off, ankles, you know, may look bloated, but this is more likely like a water retention issue. Um, and then another one that I've been hearing a lot more recently than before, which is feeling bloated like right after your meals, like 1 to 2 hours right after, just feeling like super, super bloated. And this is typically due to like a poor digestion or the low digestive enzymes that we were talking about earlier. Or it could be a bile slash gallbladder issue. So something to just kind of have in the back of your mind that if you know that either you or someone in your family has bile or gallbladder issues, this might be something to look a little closer into. But just in general, if there's bloating right after meals, we really want to look more into improving gut health in order to help with this. So number one, the most important, as with everything that my clients know that we talk about, and I'm going to be talking about it more and more and more in these trainings, is we have to reduce your stress. When we are in that fight or flight state, our body, even when we're sitting here, it's sending that blood out, right? To our arms, our legs, fight, run, get away. We're scrolling on social and it's still doing that. So again, less blood flow to the gut. When there's less blood flow to your gut, there's less blood there to help energize and provide the nutrients to your gut so it can actually do its job by squishing things along, right? And it takes a lot of energy to do that process. So you need that blood flow to get those muscles to help move things along. And when it's slowed down, things tend to build up and build up and build up, and you can leave you feeling like pretty gross by the end of the day, right? Just blah, pants fitting tighter, just not feeling great. So again, if you're someone who finds that your bloating gets worse as the day goes on, this is probably what you're dealing with. So super, 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 super important to take just 5 minutes out of your day. Just 5 to de-stress. Especially if you're having some hormonal fluctuation issues that you're going through, but also bloating and gut issues. This is really, really important to manage that stress. So one of the things that I love to do, and I've got several of my clients doing, is called the legs up the wall pose. You do this for like 5-10 minutes a day. Ideally, if you can do it like midday, it's amazing because it takes your body out of that fight or flight midday, kind of helps all the just bring you down some notches, right? So you're not like constantly go, 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 and having that blood flow go away from the gut, right? So what you do, I'm not going to get on the floor right now, but is you lay on the floor or on your bed or on the couch and you put your feet up on a wall and you're like in an L shape, right? So your head's here, body's here, legs are up, your butt is up against the wall, straight up, okay? Little bend in the knees. You don't have to keep everything flexed. They're just straight up. You make it L shaped. And what this does is it brings the blood flow from your legs back down to your gut to help provide it with more blood so you can keep things going digestion wise, but it also slows down the heart rate. It helps to take you down a couple notches. If we're like vibrating up here, it's going to bring you down. It also slows down your breathing. And this is where I highly recommend focusing on your breath when we are in that position. I know several of you have had me talk about our box breathing before. That would be a great time to plug some box breathing in while you're on the ground. Just helping to bring those cortisol levels down. It's really great to, it really helps with that like hormone balance. And all in all, it's just like one of the easiest things you can do. It's free. You can really do it anywhere. You just need like 5-10 minutes. You can do this like at work, at your office with the girls, like just for a few minutes, right? Another thing that you can do is also rub your belly in a counterclockwise direction. So counterclockwise to your body, right? So you're going to go from the right side up and across down your left side because that's the way our digestive tract tracks. So, oh man, that was a terrible joke. You don't have to laugh at that. So, counterclockwise from like how I see myself, right? Counterclockwise. So up, and it's just like a light pressure. And you can do this any time of the day, but it's something else you can sneak in while you're in that legs up the wall pose. Again, just getting the blood flow going, massaging to get the movement happening, get those gases squishing through and out, right? So the other thing is to take like slow, deep breaths before you eat your meals. And I know this one can be really difficult, right? Because again, we're go, go, go. It might sound a little super crazy, but it actually works. So this is going to allow you to actually connect with what you're about to do, opposed to just shoveling it in and not even knowing like what you ate, right? Like I know there's some of us that are working through our lunch that are eating in the car on the way to wherever. So if you could just take like 5 deep inhales and like just inhale and exhale, slow and controlled, inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth, it will help your body to calm down, to really focus and be present with what is about to take place. And it helps to just, your heart rate's down, your breathing's down, takes you out of that stress state again, and you're more present in what you're about to eat. And it gives your body the chance to get the digestive process started before you even pick up your fork, because you actually start producing saliva in your mouth. That's like the first process of digestion is the saliva. It helps to break down the food, helps everything slide down easy. So when you smell like the food being cooked or like it's on your plate, or you've ever walked by like a restaurant or a bakery, right? Kind of start to salivate because it just like smells so good, right? Like that's how it works. And saliva is the first step to digestion. So if you allow yourself to be present with your food, it actually helps, again, break it down more. More saliva in your mouth is actually a really, really good thing because when it's mixed with chewing, it just helps all that digestion process be smoother, for lack of a better word. But yeah, it's not as hard on your gut later. So it's going to lead to less bloating, which I know sounds stupid. You're like, I'm not going to just sit there and like do my breaths before I eat, but do it. Give it a try. Like it really makes a huge difference. I think you'll be surprised. And again, like these things are like totally free, right? Like legs up the wall, some deep breathing, like totally free. They don't cost you any money. They're super simple. They make a huge difference in your bloating. Yeah, that one's just, it's massive. Honestly, like the thought of food, guys, like if you're ever, like think about like your favorite meal or like an experience that you had, like when you were taking a trip or you went to a restaurant, start thinking about that meal you had. Like, does it make you start to kind of salivate a little bit? Like that's, it's hugely important, and it's something that gets really easily skipped over, right? Because we don't even look at our food when we're eating it. We're just constantly go, 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 just shovel it in and out and done, right? But that's when I really want to emphasize on like a million times, like take a breath, slow down, be present with your food, chew it well, taste it, actually taste what you're doing. And again, when we chew well, then you don't have big chunks in your stomach that are trying to digest later, right? Like you're making it easier on its process by just taking a couple extra seconds. So, all right, speaking of, if you have your water by you, please take a big drink, because the next thing that we are going to talk about, which is my favorite subject, you all know if you've been around for a while, is hydration. I know it sounds super simple, right? It may sound like, I don't know, just you hear me talk about water and hydration all the time. So I know it might sound like, I'm beating a dead horse with this, but it really affects every single area of our health. Every single one. Just drink more water. Stress less and drink more water. That will fix a whole slew of shit for us, really. So, but when it comes to digestion, it is like it's this simple. We really do it ties into everything. If we're not adequately hydrated, things don't move through us well. The digestive system can't do the squeezing that it needs to. Those muscles can't flex and contract like they need to move it through. They just sit there and things get built up and it gets harder to get it out of our system, right? So very specifically in our gastrointestinal system, we need water to keep those things from moving, mix up with our digestive enzymes, our bile, and everything else that makes up our delicious gut juices to help us break down food, which therefore makes your food more available for absorption, okay? And this is necessary so that we're actually getting as much of the nutrients out of our food as possible. And then what water's doing is it's going to help mix with the fibers to keep things soft and moving along. So instead of rock hard sitting inside you, we're going to have easier bowel movements. And daily is really what we're looking for. Dehydration is actually a major cause of constipation and bloating. So just a general rule of thumb to shoot for when it comes to your hydration is take your body weight in pounds and divide it by 2. So for example, if you're 180 pounds, divide that by 2. The minimum ounces of water a day that you want to drink is about 90 ounces of water. And then if you're exercising, we want to add about 15 to 20 ounces more for every hour that you're like sweating or putting like an output of energy. Okay. Not just like a leisurely walk, but like putting out some energy. Okay. The next thing, again, said this already, but chew and eat slower. So we talk about slowing down before our meals, but actually slowing down during your meal is really important as well. Putting your fork down between bites and then taking that time to slow down, actually taste the flavors, experience your meal. Think about what those flavors are like in your mouth. Like, what are the textures? How does it feel? What's happening in your mouth? Is it sending some signals to your brain? Is it bringing up some memories? Typically, the longer the food stays in our mouth, the more flavors actually change due to that saliva. Those digestive enzymes in our saliva, they create different chemical reactions. So the longer it's in your mouth, the longer like it starts to taste different too. So slow down, just like leave yourself some more time to chew that food between bites and really enjoy it. It really also helps the rest of our digestive system. Like I said, like chunks of food trying to digest in our gut opposed to very well chewed up, moist food. It's going to just be a lot more of a better liquid mix for your body to deal with than the big chunks, right? So, our stomach, it has a lot of work to do, right? Like it doesn't want to do the job of the saliva in your mouth. The digestive enzymes in your saliva, they're called amylase. So you leave all of that work to your stomach to do, and then everything's going to be kind of like behind. And if you didn't let that amylase enzyme do what it's supposed to do in your saliva, it just, snowballs effect all the way down. So everything's connected. Just remember everything's connected. So if you can stop and really think about the flavors, the textures, everything like that, you're going to have a much better brain to gut connection, which is also really helpful in speeding up and improving the regularity of your digestion, which in turn is going to help you reduce bloating. Also, that mindful eating is going to in turn help you to not overeat, right? Because we really are slowing down and indulging in the food we're eating instead of mindlessly, and you're like, oh my God, I could have gone with like 3 cups less of that, right? So the next thing is eating without distractions and actually like sit your ass down. Allow all your senses to be a part of the eating process. It will allow you to connect to what it's supposed to be doing during mealtime, and digestion will follow suit. So obviously, we definitely all have times where that's like really not an option. I get that, right? Like whether we eat on the go or we're distracted or both, but it really is in our best interest if you really want to hammer down on your bloating and reduce that is to eat without distraction. So try not to be watching TV or scrolling social media. Like just sit down and be focused on your food. You know, we're not reading, we're not driving. When you do things like this, you're just not present at all. It really disconnects the brain from the gut, which leads to eating just faster. We swallow more air. We're not chewing our food well. We're go, 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 go. Our cortisol stays high, digestion stays slow, and bloating just gets worse and worse and worse. So it just is that horrible snowball effect, right? So um, I was just talking with one of my clients the other day, and she was saying how she really cannot believe how much her bloating has improved by just putting her fork down in between bites. She was like, I can't believe that was such a game changer. Something so silly and sounded so crazy, but it really has made such a huge difference. And I'm like, I know, it's crazy. We're like always rushed to, eat and go and on to the next thing. And, um, you know, I I used to do that a lot worse than what I do now. I'm grateful that I'm not as go, 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 go as I used to be. But yeah, I was always eating in the car and I know that was a big part of why I had that like 6 month belly all the time because it was like, go to this, eat here, go to this, eat here, da da, all and cortisol up here, and never a good thing. Um, so yeah. So not to mention like when we're in that state too, we're not paying attention to those appetite cues. Like, oh, I'm full, I can stop now, right? Because we're just go, 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 go. And like I said, we tend to overeat. And so this helps us again to just kind of be a little bit more present. And it's just good to just be really aware of all these things. So there are some foods that you can eat that help with bloating and water retention. And we want to make sure that we're adding as many of these in as possible to help with the bloating. And of course, if you are allergic or reactive to any of these, prioritize the other one, right? So I'm not going to tell you to eat a food and you're like, oh, my body doesn't like that, but she said I should eat it. No, that's not what I'm saying. Like, you got to know what's right for your body, right? If you're allergic sensitive, it's just going to start causing you more bloating, which is not what we're trying to accomplish here. So we're going to touch a little bit more on those later, but foods that are really good for bloating, listen up, bananas. Yes, bananas are great. Avocados are another one because they have lots of potassium. They help to manage your sodium levels. And then you're not going to be holding on to as much water as you typically would, which is amazing. Celery, because it is hydrating, so it helps with that, get that digestive system moving. Turmeric can be a big help, especially if you have any IBS symptoms. It does help lower inflammation in your body. And peppermint. Peppermint can actually relax the muscles in your digestive system. So you can actually like peppermint tea, stuff like that, can be really helpful. I love peppermint tea, especially in the evening team. So bananas, avocados, celery, turmeric, peppermint. So those are like 5 super solid options that can naturally help with bloating. Are there others? Absolutely, but those are like the top 5 that really like get it done. The next thing we're going to talk about to help with bloating is working on your intestinal motility. So motility is where the muscles in the intestines flex in a pattern to like push the food through and out of our bodies. So like I was saying, easier, they squeeze along, right? They kind of go in a wave of pushing food through your body. So in the large intestine, this is called peristalsis. And we really need to maintain a healthy state of motility in order to avoid bloating, because if motility has slowed or it's stalled, that's when bloating is far more likely to occur. It's going to give the food more time to release those gases from sitting there, like we've been talking about. and it's going to take up even more space. It's going to create that tight, distending feeling in your abdomen that we get with bloating. So, what are some things that we can naturally do to help with motility? Well, one is aloe juice. Actually, I poured a little bit in my tea the other day because that time of the month things start to slow down, high stress, all the things, right? So put a little in my tea. Sometimes I call it my poop juice because it helps get things going in a natural way, but not like in a like, oh my God, I got to go to the bathroom way, right? So it's very gentle. Um, and then, there's tons of herbs and botanicals which we can eat in our food or we can consume in teas or tinctures. So trying to add in as many of those into your diet on a regular basis is a really great way to like naturally support your gut motility. And it helps kind of avoid those struggles with digestion. So one of the first ones I'd say is ginger. And I know not everybody loves ginger root, but it has so many benefits. You can add fresh ginger root to soups, salads. You can blend it up into like a salad dressing. You can put it into smoothies or even just like slice off a chunk of it and heat it up with like bone broth or tea. That's how I tend to do it. And it's a great way to just get those phytochemicals from the ginger to help with your digestion. And this is because ginger is like pretty bitter and it actually helps like bitter foods in general to generate our digestive juices and tell our digestive system, hey, it's time to get things rocking and rolling here. The next one is artichokes. I love me some artichokes. They can even be marinated artichokes, really. Like, watch the sodium content, but they can be really helpful in supporting that movement in our gut. And then, the things that you'll likely find in like teas, if you look, teas in your cabinet, a lot of them might even have these already. Or, if you're going to the store, like keep these ones on mind. But non-caffeinated, so we're thinking like lemon balm, chamomile, peppermint, we mentioned that earlier, caraway, and angelica. And I know that's not, again, not a whole list of all of them, but this is like some of the most common ones that you're going to see in just the teas that you're going to find at the grocery store. So, just sipping a cup of tea a day is a really awesome place to start in supporting the motility in your gut. And it's pretty easy to do because it doesn't require you to totally change something up in your day. Plus, non-caffeinated tea counts as your water consumption for the day. So, one cup of tea, add that to your water. And then there is one supplement that I do want to mention, and I want to preface this with I always, 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 always want you to do all of the other things first before we start looking at supplementation, right? Because if you're not lacking in something and add it in, it can, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, just like the gut bacteria that we were talking about, right? So this is not a supplement for everybody, but it is one that I do want to mention because it can be really, really beneficial for those who are really struggling with gut health. If we've done all of the other things for, several weeks and are still not seeing an improvement, this is where we might look next. Okay, this is not your first rule or first thing we're throwing at it. Okay, but it's called 5-HTP. So this is our precursor to serotonin, and serotonin is largely produced in our gut. So if we take that 5-HTP, I would recommend doing it before bed. It can help with sleep. So again, our perimenopause, menopause women that are struggling with that, this could be something that helps us. And like I said, so it's a precursor to serotonin. So boosting that serotonin in our gut, it allows our gut to be happy and healthy and improve motility and help keep things moving along, which is pretty cool, right? And serotonin is not just like a happy hormone in general, like it boosts your mood, it helps gut motility. Like it's just that overall feel really good. But again, kind of after we've tried all the other things and we're still really struggling, this would be something to look at. So, you know what I found really interesting over the last few years of really diving into my nutrition certifications is this is wild to me, but you know what else increases serotonin? Like potatoes. Potatoes. Potatoes help with your digestion, they help with bloating, and they make your gut happy. They increase the serotonin naturally in your body. So, like if you do like oil and then roast and then cool them down and like re-roast them. Specifically like gold potatoes will be the best for this. But if you boil them and then let them sit and cool for like 24 hours, and then you do like whatever you want with them, like the oil and roast and season them, it creates a resistant starch, which is really, really great for your gut. So yeah, like if you like potatoes, eat more potatoes, guys. Like I'm not even joking. Like this is so simple, right? So great for your happy hormones. And also like have I have tea at night. Like that's my thing that I've been trying to do more. Sometimes it's lemon balm, sometimes it's chamomile, sometimes it's peppermint. Like I've noticed like doing peppermint, like if I'm feeling really like snacky or like a craving at night, and I'm like, I don't really need that. Peppermint tea actually helps to curve and kick my craving, and then also it's just helping with the gut. Um, so if you are someone who does get bloated throughout the day, like having one that is like a combination of one of those two things is amazing. So we talked about the foods to include that help with bloating. We talked about the things that cause bloating and the ways to help um, avoid the bloating. But what are some actual things to avoid when we're trying to reduce the bloating? So first and foremost, keep in mind that 100% of the time we always want to talk about adding things in and adjusting the way we eat opposed to taking things out of your life all the time. Okay, we add in first. So just be mindful about these next things that I'm going to share, because too much restriction is going to cause even more stress on your body. And let's not fool ourselves. We're all a little stressed than we should be right now, right? So, and it's just going to make you like not enjoy life. So we want to be like consciously valuing all of our nutrition decisions from an overall health perspective and not just bloating perspective. Okay, so always add things in first. Adjust your lifestyle. That way you're, you know, the way you're eating, trying the feet up the wall pose, the breathing, all of that before you start doing this. Okay, so first thing that you should avoid, often if not always, is you would think this is obvious, but sometimes we are just stubborn. But for foods that you're allergic to and that you're sensitive to, okay? I know it can be tough. I did not want to give up cheese. I freaking love cheese. It was a very dark time for me. I actually cried that first week when I was taking it out because like I was so freaking miserable because cheese is like life for me. And it was really tough. But it was really, really good for me to do that. And if you don't ever give your body a break from the inflammation that those things are caused from, like some sensitivities and the allergies, like it's almost guaranteed that you're going to be bloated like all the time, like on a regular basis. And that's not good either. So again, this does not mean that you need to avoid them forever. When we take some away, we we just get that like overall inflammation to decrease, okay? And we know that during perimenopause and menopause, when our estrogen levels go down, inflammation goes up because estrogen keeps our inflammation in check. So you might notice maybe some foods that you were kind of sort of sensitive to before now might affect you a little worse. Maybe alcohol is even one of those, right? That like as we get a little older, our body doesn't metabolize that the same. So it's part of that drop in estrogen that we're experiencing. So you might not even realize how much that has an effect on things. So, you know, we just need to sometimes take some time away and we can bring that back in when your body's in a little bit better like homeostasis or like a better place for that, right? So, and then as I mentioned, like there's those food maps earlier. Um, it can help to take them out for a short period of time, but the goal is always to eat as many different foods as possible while maintaining good digestive health, great metabolism, great mental health. Like we want to keep this guy in check too. Your social well-being, like we've all done the crash restrict diets, right? Those do not work, so let's not do that again. Variety to fuel your gut properly, like your gut bacteria, you need for it to have different kinds of fiber and different kinds of nutrients and vitamins and minerals and all those things for it to really like give you absorb the nutrients that your whole body needs. So we want to make sure that you have that variety. And I'm going to emphasize that eating as many things as possible, specifically plants, so that you keep that in mind as many as possible, right? So we also want to avoid excessive fluid intake surrounding, especially during meals. So this is a little bit different tactic, right? So try to give yourself at least 10 minutes on either side of your meals where you're not sipping fluids, because we really don't want to water down your pH of our stomach because we need it very acidic. We need that environment to do its job, right? So there's a different digestive enzyme called pepsin, and it's activated during that process. And if we're overly consuming the fluids, then we're like watering that environment down, and the pepsin is either not going to be released or it'll eventually be released in the wrong place, which that in itself can be really damaging to other areas of your gut. So avoiding excessive water intake during and around meals, because we also don't want it to take longer to digest, right? So the longer digestion takes, the more likely it is to release those gases, the more likely those gases are going to make you feel bloated, right? So if you feel like you want to have a drink during your meal, something that I learned recently was having like 4 ounces of a warm beverage, okay? So a warm beverage is going to be better than a cold beverage because if you think about it, like the heat in our digestive system and the heat that it creates in order to break down these foods, so it's if we're throwing cold fluid in there, right, it's like getting rid of the heat that is created in order to break those things down. And so, yeah, that was a little eye-opening to me. It was like, wow, that's like really smart to have warm water to keep the heat going. So it's also like keeping it at a minimum, like 4 ounces throughout your meal if you really need it. And then earlier we mentioned drinking enough water as being something that's important for good hydration or good digestion. And avoiding bloating. So like finding that happy medium, right? I know it's a little difficult, takes a little bit of planning, but like how do we drink enough water while also keeping enough time surrounding our meals to where we're not like messing up our stomach acid, right? Like it just takes some practice. It takes being mindful and just kind of thinking a little bit more ahead. I know with a lot of my clients are like, well, I just like forget to drink water. And then I remember to drink water and it's like 5 minutes before I eat. And then I just like pound, 16 ounces right there. Well, you're probably going to feel pretty crappy, right? I'm not going to lie. Because after, that acidity isn't there to break down the food. So really you're just like, okay, I want you to more regulate like, okay, by this time I should have this water bottle like done, right? This time of day I should have X amount of these water bottles done. Just again, that thinking ahead so we can kind of plan this out. It can really go a long way with improving your health and making sure that you're hitting your water goal, that we're not messing up our stomach acid and having even more bloat. So then we also want to avoid naked carbs. So this is the last of the things that we want to avoid. And it's especially true if you're someone who wakes up bloated because that bloating is tied to blood sugar dysregulation. So eating naked carbs is going to lead to even more blood sugar dysregulation. So as a general guideline, we try to avoid those on most occasions. So always just pair your carbs with a protein or a fat or veggies, something with a little bit more fiber, okay? If you're gonna have a treat, try to have it after you've had like your full meal, just so that it helps again with that blood sugar control. And you don't have to cut out carbs. That is a myth, okay? That is a lie. You do not need to cut out carbs. So please don't worry about that. Carbs are not the devil. You need them. Eat them, but just eat them with a healthy fat or with a protein. Um, so by the end of the day, the most important thing is going to figure out, it's going to be to like figure out the combinations that really like work for you. And some people will thrive on certain foods, whereas other people just can't even tolerate them. So like my mom, she can't have cucumbers. Like I always used to think that was weird. Like, what do you mean you can't have cucumbers? Like it would make her like burp so much, like that she couldn't eat cucumber. But I was like, it's just like water. That's so weird to me. But she'd get bloated and burpy. It was like super weird. I don't even know. But everyone's going to be a little bit different, right? So you've got to figure out the combination of foods and things that work for you, and then work on slowly increasing your exposure to some of the other foods as well. So make sure you're getting a variety. Fiber is going to be incredibly huge. So too much fiber can sometimes cause bloating and digestive distress. Most women have a really hard time meeting their daily fiber goal, but you really got to figure out what is best for you. Typically, I like to recommend that women eat somewhere between about 20 to 28 grams of protein or of fiber a day, but also understanding that this does not work for everyone. So if you're someone with like, I always mess this up, diverticulitis or ulcerative colitis, the things like that, typically you have to eat a little less fiber with stuff like that, because too much fiber in veggies can actually cause flare-ups in those things. So it's really just like figuring out what's best for your body, right? What makes your gut feel happy, but you also need to be really consistent. So if you're going from a decent range to a really high to a really low, this could lead, like if your fiber is like super high one day, super low the other day, just like anything, right? Um, it's going to probably lead to bloating, constipation, scale's going to go up for a couple days. So just paying attention to your fiber intake um, and where it's at and trying to keep it as consistent as possible is really important. Um, and it's a very simple thing that you can just start looking at and modifying and, making yourself feel a lot better from just like a simple awareness around that. But again, just keep in mind, everybody's different. It's important to remember that certain foods can cause gas for you, but maybe not somebody else. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily bad for you, right? It's just learning how to eat those. Maybe it's in moderation. Maybe it's how you pair your foods with other foods. Maybe it's when you're stressed out that it affects you more. Thinking about taking it out for a little while and then adding it back in. If you're stressed foods tend to have a bigger reaction too. So like the foods that you already are a little sensitive to when you're stressed out, they will have a bigger reaction than when you're not stressed out. So paying attention to that, especially in perimenopause and menopause, your cortisol levels, your estrogen levels, they really do begin to impact things as well. So we gotta just be aware and start to balance. Sometimes eating smaller quantities can help you build up your tolerance to minimize that gas, but that's also just, you know, going to be the foods that naturally lead to gas and bloating as well. So, um, yeah, like right now, like I had a client that we had to take out peppers for her and broccoli. And there was something else I can't remember right now, but yeah, if she was having those, she can only have them cooked because her body doesn't like it when they're raw. And so we've had to just figure that out. Like, okay, her body likes it cooked, but can't have it raw. So I just want to summarize a few things here because I know that was a lot. So one is that you could have an intolerance that we need to slowly take things out and then bring them back in. You can have an overgrowth of a gut bacteria, good or bad. So probiotics might not actually be the answer here. You might have to go off of those. If you have questions, message me. I'll be happy to help kind of figure that out. Again, whole training on prebiotics, probiotics coming very, very soon. Again, constipation can be a huge one. If you're not going to the restroom every single day, at least once a day, we've got a problem, okay? This is common but not normal. Like, it's something we really need to work on. Stress and dehydration play a huge role in those. So, needing to up your water, focus on de-stressing, chewing, eating slowly, not distracted, avoiding eating on the run, making sure you're putting down your fork in between meals. It's a good way to slow yourself down. And I know this can be really hard sometimes, and to be like more mindful and slow down and be present with that. But it is such a huge game changer when you're focused, and it really, really helps. So, um, oh yeah, so some of the foods that we can help with the bloating, bananas, avocados, celery, turmeric, peppermint, again, having aloe juice or herbs like ginger, artichoke, lemon balm, chamomile, caraway, angelica. That 5-HPT supplement is great as well. Avoiding fluid around your meal times as much as you can. Don't have carbs on their own. Balancing your blood sugars is really important, but you also need to be eating enough food. Can't stress that enough. If you're stressed out, it's going to increase your inflammation, and your cortisol level will be so high that your digestion will slow down, and your bloating will get worse throughout the day. So it can be challenging to eat more food when you're feeling bloated, I know. So this is maybe where we have to tailor back your exercise for a little bit, or maybe this is where upping our carbohydrates, and maybe we're focusing on more calorie dense foods, you know, so that there's not as much like volume in your stomach. Like there's lots of strategies to help mitigate stress to bring that bloating down. Because if we're out, our estrogen is low, our cortisol is high, our inflammation and like gut health and bloating and even fluid retention is going to increase quite a bit. So we need to address that. So, and then we talked about like taking a break from certain foods, but you need to make sure you're eating enough consistently throughout the day as well. That can also throw things off. So yeah, I know I gave you a lot of stuff, a lot of if, ands, or buts, which kind of sucks because it's all that like it very much depends situation, but it's really different for everyone and everybody, right? So if you're someone that's really having like struggling with bloating and you don't really know where to start, first off, message me with any questions or comment below the video. I'd love to answer any questions that I can here. So I hope you learned a lot tonight. Thanks for joining me, ladies. Make it a great night.